She almost became a breeding machine. Until the human waiting in line saved her. The market was loud, filled with voices that echoed like thunder across the iron walls. Flickering lights hung from chains, throwing shadows on cages lined side by side. Inside the cages, dozens of frightened women sat in silence, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. Some were human, some were alien, all stolen from their homes and brought here as nothing more than property. The smell of smoke and sweat filled the air, mixed with the sound of rattling chains. At the center of the marketplace, a large stage was raised, covered with rusted steel plates. The auctioneer, a tall alien with skin as dark as iron, stepped forward with a cruel smile. His voice boomed through the speakers. "Tonight, you will see the best stock we have, young, fertile, strong." The crowd cheered, shouting numbers before the bidding even began, their voices greedy, their eyes hungry. Guards dragged a girl onto the stage, her wrists bound with heavy cuffs. She was small compared to the aliens, her silver hair dirty and tangled, her steps weak and unsteady. The auctioneer yanked her forward and raised her chin so everyone could see her face. The crowd roared in approval, shouting, "Perfect strong womb, good for breeding." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she kept them from falling. She had cried too much already, and now her heart was heavy with silence. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Please, not this, not again." But no one listened, no one cared. To them, she was not a person, she was a machine waiting to be used. The auctioneer spread his arms wide and shouted, "We begin the bidding." The numbers came fast, shouted by sharp alien voices, one after another. The prices grew higher. The girl's body trembled as her hope slipped away. Every bid meant another day in chains, another life stolen. She closed her eyes, wishing the floor would open and swallow her. And then, among the crowd, a figure stood still. He was different from the others. He did not shout. He did not cheer. He only watched with calm eyes. He was human. The aliens around him noticed, and some sneered. "What is a human doing here?" one muttered. "Does he think he can buy what he cannot control?" another laughed. The human did not answer. He simply folded his arms and stared at the stage. The girl's gaze drifted across the crowd, and for one brief second, her eyes locked with his. Something in his calm stare stopped her from collapsing. For the first time, she felt seen. The auctioneer smirked and called out again, "Do I hear another bid?" Voices rose, higher numbers screamed across the hall, but the human said nothing. He only waited. The girl's lips moved silently, her prayer almost invisible. "Please, if you are here to save me, do it now." The lights above flickered, the stage rattled, the guards pushed her forward again. The auctioneer shouted, "This one will make thousands of children. She is strong, she will not break. Who dares bid higher?" The crowd laughed, coins clattered, voices overlapped in greed. The girl almost fell to her knees, her hope burning out like a dying flame. And then a new sound cut through the chaos. It was not loud, but it was strong. A calm voice said, "I will bid." The human had raised his hand. The marketplace froze for a heartbeat. Aliens turned to look, surprised and amused. The auctioneer laughed. A human, bidding for breeding stock. How strange, how bold. The girl gasped softly, not believing what she heard. Her chains rattled as she lifted her head, her heart pounding. Could it be true? The first alien snarled, raising his own price, but the human did not flinch. His hand rose again, steady, unshaken. The bidding grew louder, more furious. The crowd jeered at the human, calling him foolish, weak, unworthy. But he stood like stone, unmoved. His eyes never left the girl. She could not look away either. Something in his gaze told her he was not like the rest. The auctioneer banged his hammer, sweat dripping down his forehead. The numbers climbed, the tension grew. Still, the human did not break. Still, the girl prayed. In the shadows of the marketplace, whispers spread. Why was a human here? What did he want? And why did he look at the girl not as a machine, but as a person? The crowd grew restless. The girl's breath came fast. Somewhere deep inside her, Hope flickered again, small, fragile, but alive. If this human truly meant to save her, then maybe, just maybe, this night would not end in chains. Maybe her story would not end as a breeding machine. Maybe this was only the beginning. And dear listener, if you are feeling the same suspense and want to hear what happens next, please subscribe to this channel. Your support keeps these stories alive and helps us bring you more powerful HFY tales. The auctioneer raised his hammer again, his voice sharp. Final call, final price. Who dares to bid against the human? The hall went silent. The girl's heart beat like thunder in her chest, and for the first time in her life, she waited not for despair, but for salvation. The hammer struck the stage with a metallic echo, the sound bouncing against the steel walls like a warning. "All right," the auctioneer shouted, his voice dripping with arrogance. "We begin the true bidding now." The crowd leaned forward, dozens of eyes glowing with greed, dozens of hands ready to rise. The girl stood frozen at the center of the stage, her chest rising and falling with quick breaths, her chained hands trembling. Her legs threatened to give way beneath her, but she forced herself to remain standing. She told herself that if she fell, the crowd would laugh even louder, and she refused to give them that. The first voice rang out, deep and confident, 1,000, and credits. The crowd rumbled with approval. The auctioneer grinned, clapping his long fingers together. "Ah yes, 1,000 to the noble house of Krental." The girl shivered at the name. She had heard stories of Krental buyers. No one ever returned from their hands. Another alien raised a clawed hand. 2,000. A rival hissed and shouted. 3,000. Voices collided in a storm of greed, the numbers climbing like fire up a dry tree. Each higher bid made the girl's heart sink deeper. Each shout slammed another nail into her cage. She lowered her eyes, whispering to herself, "It is useless. He will not save me. No one will." But then, quietly, from the middle of the crowd, the human spoke again. 5,000. The marketplace stilled for a second. The auctioneer blinked in surprise, then smirked. The crowd erupted into laughter. A few even clapped mockingly. "A human dares. A human spends coin." The girl raised her eyes, her chains rattling softly. Could it be real? The house of Krental's buyer sneered, 10,000. His voice was filled with venom, like he wanted not only to win, but to humiliate the human. The human, however, did not flinch. 15,000, he said calmly. Gasps spread across the hall. It was not only the number, but the tone, steady, unshaken, as if he had no fear at all. The girl felt something stir inside her chest, something she had long forgotten. It was not hope, not yet, but the shadow of it. Her eyes stayed locked on the human. He did not look away, not once. It was as though he had entered the marketplace only for her. The thought made her knees weak, and she gripped her chains to keep from falling. The auctioneer's grin widened. He thrived on conflict, thrived on tension. He raised his voice. "Ah, we have a battle now, a fight for the prize." The crowd cheered, clapping and stomping as if they were watching blood. "Sport!" Another buyer shouted, 20,000, his eyes glowing bright yellow. The human raised his hand once more. 30,000. The crowd gasped again, this time louder. Whispers spread quickly. Where does a human find such wealth? How dare he? Why is he doing this? The girl's heart hammered in her chest. She could not understand it, but her tears threatened to fall again. Not tears of despair, but tears of confusion. Why would anyone fight for her, especially a human? What did he want? The Krental buyer slammed his fist on the arm of his chair, the sound sharp and angry. 50,000, he shouted, his voice full of hatred. The hall trembled under the weight of the number. For a moment, silence followed. Everyone turned to the human, waiting. Would he back down? Would he admit defeat? The girl's lips trembled, her chest tight with fear. If he stopped now, her hope would shatter forever. And then, the human's voice cut through the silence once more. 100,000. The entire marketplace exploded in chaos. Shouts and screams filled the air, some in disbelief, some in rage. The auctioneer nearly dropped his hammer, his eyes wide with shock. Even the guards shifted uncomfortably, unsure of what was unfolding. The girl gasped so hard, it felt like the air left her lungs. Her knees buckled, and this time, she could not stop herself from falling. But before she hit the stage, the human's gaze caught hers again. And for some reason she did not understand. That look was enough to keep her breathing. The auctioneer slammed the hammer against the steel, desperate to regain control. 100,000 to the human, he roared, his voice cracking slightly. The crowd booed, shouted, demanded justice. The Krental buyer stood with a snarl, his claws cutting deep into the arm of his chair. This is an insult, he roared. A human cannot own such stock. This is ours by right. The human's voice rose again, calm but sharp as a blade. I did not come here to buy a machine, he said. I came here for a person. The words were simple, but they struck the hall like thunder. The girl froze, her breath caught in her throat. A person, not property, not stock, not machine. For the first time in her life, someone called her that. The marketplace fell into uneasy silence. No one had ever heard such words in this place. No one dared to speak of slaves as people, and yet the human had spoken it without fear. The auctioneer licked his lips, his smile twitching. He raised his hammer again, sweat shining on his face. Final call, he shouted, his voice shaking. Final call. The human wins if no one speaks. The crowd buzzed with whispers. The Krental buyer burned with rage. The girl's heartbeat thundered in her ears, each second a lifetime. And then the hammer fell with a sharp clang. The human had won. The girl's chains rattled as she stumbled forward, too shocked to stand straight. Her heart raced, her throat burned. Was it over, or had it only just begun? The sound of the hammer still echoed when the human stepped forward. All eyes turned to him as the crowd parted, some with anger, some with curiosity. His boots struck the metal floor with calm weight, each step louder than the noise around him. The guards shifted uneasily, their hands on their weapons, not sure if they should stop him or let him pass. The auctioneer swallowed hard, but forced a smile. The human has won the prize, he announced. Come and claim what you paid for. The girl's body stiffened, her chains rattling as she tried to keep her balance. Her heart pounded wildly. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. She watched him approach with wide eyes. For so long, every set of footsteps near her meant pain, meant cruelty. But this man's steps were different, steady, certain, like he did not come for ownership, but for something else. The human reached the stage, his gaze never leaving hers. When he stood before her, the crowd jeered. Look at him, someone shouted. So weak, so fragile, and yet he dares. Another alien hissed. He will not last a day with her. She will break him, or he will break her. Laughter filled the hall, cruel and sharp. The human did not flinch. He did not even look at them. He only raised his hand toward the girl, as if asking her to trust him. The girl froze, confusion racing through her chest. Trust was something stolen from her long ago. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why?" One word, trembling, but full of questions. The human answered softly, his words almost lost in the chaos. "Because you are not a thing," he said. "You are not a machine." The crowd howled at his words, their anger growing. The auctioneer tried to laugh, but his voice shook. Yes, humans say strange things. Still, the girl's breath hitched in her throat, her vision blurred with tears. No one had spoken to her like that in years. For a moment, she forgot the chains on her wrists. She forgot the guards around her. All she saw was the human and the truth in his eyes. The auctioneer snapped his fingers, and the guards stepped forward to hand her over. But the Krental buyer stood suddenly, his claws clashing against the steel table. "This is a disgrace," he roared. "I will not allow this insult. A human cannot take what belongs to the houses." The guards hesitated, trapped between orders and fear. The air grew heavy, thick with tension. The human's eyes flickered toward the Krental buyer, calm but sharp. He did not shout, he did not threaten. He simply said, "She does not belong to you." The words hit like a blade. The crowd gasped, voices rising in anger. The Krental buyer snarled, "Then she belongs to you, human. Is that it?" Will you take her as your breeding stock? Will you make her what we would have made her? The girl's body stiffened, her heart sinking again. She could not bear the thought, not from him, not after the way he looked at her. But the human shook his head slowly. No, he said. I will not take her for that. I will not use her. I'll free her. The marketplace erupted in chaos. The auctioneer shouted, "Silence!" His voice breaking. Guards raised their weapons, unsure where to point them. The crowd pushed and shoved, some screaming in outrage, others whispering in awe. No one had ever spoken of freedom in this place. It was unthinkable. The girl's knees buckled again. But this time, it was not despair. It was disbelief, overwhelming and sharp. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Free. You would free me." The human nodded once, as if it was the simplest truth in the universe. "Yes," he said, "you deserve more than this. You deserve to live." Her tears finally fell, hot and unstoppable. Her hands shook as she tried to reach for him, but the chains held her back. The human looked at the guards and said, "Release her." The auctioneer laughed nervously. No, we cannot simply." Before he could finish, the human's hand moved. From his coat, he drew a small weapon, old but deadly. He aimed it not at the girl, not at the guards, but at the auctioneer's head. "Release her," he said again, his voice calm but iron strong. The guards froze. The crowd roared. For the first time, the human looked dangerous. For the first time, everyone in the hall felt the weight of his will. The auctioneer's lips trembled, sweat rolling down his face. With a sharp motion, he signaled the guards. The chains around the girl's wrists unlocked, clattering to the floor. The sound was louder than the crowd, louder than the chaos. To the girl, it was the sound of a new life. Her hands trembled as she lifted them. Free for the first time in years, she stared at the human, her voice shaking. "Why would you risk yourself for me?" The human holstered his weapon slowly and answered, "Because no one else would." The crowd erupted into fury. The Krental buyer roared, "Seize him, kill him, take the girl back." Guards moved. Chaos ensued. The girl stumbled forward, clutching the human's arm. Her voice whispered, "They will not stop. They will never let us go." The human looked down at her, his eyes burning with quiet fire. "Then we make them try," he said. The hall shook with rage as guards closed in, and in that storm of voices and violence, the human stood firm, the girl by his side, her chains shattered, her heart beating with new strength. The story of the breeding machine was over, but a new story had just begun. The hall was chaos, a storm of shouts and roars. Guards rushed forward, their weapons raised, their armor clanking against the steel floor. The Krental buyer's furious voice boomed above the noise. "Take them both. I will see the human's blood spilled tonight." The girl clutched the human's arm tightly, her chains gone, but her fears still heavy. She whispered, "You cannot fight them all." Her voice trembling, the human did not answer, his eyes sharp and focused. His calm was a weapon of its own, steady as stone even in the madness. The first guard lunged with a spear, but the human moved faster than anyone expected. With one swift strike of his old weapon, the guard fell, smoke rising from his armor. The crowd gasped, some in shock, others in delight at the sight of blood. The girl stumbled back, staring wide-eyed. This human was not only calm, he was dangerous. Each movement was precise, not wild, not reckless. It was as if he had fought battles far worse than this auction hall. More guards surrounded them, their blades shining. The auctioneer screamed, "Seize him! Protect the merchandise!" But the human's voice cut through, firm and cold. "She is not merchandise." The girl's heart clenched at those words. She had heard herself called many names, but never that. Not a thing, not a machine, but a person worth defending. The guard struck again, blades flashing. The human pulled the girl behind him and moved with fierce speed. He dodged one strike, blocked another, and fired his weapon with perfect aim. Each shot found its mark, sending guards crashing to the floor. The crowd roared louder. The hall filled with screams. Some shouted for his death. Others whispered that they had never seen such courage. The Krental buyer's face twisted with rage. He stood tall, his claws gleaming, his eyes burning red. "You dare humiliate me, human," he growled. "You dare take what is mine." The human's voice stayed calm. "She was never yours." The buyer roared and leapt onto the stage, his massive form towering over them. The girl gasped, pulling back, but the human stood his ground. For a moment, time slowed. The crowd fell silent, waiting. It was no longer just an auction. It was a duel. The Krental buyer swung his claw like a blade, sparks flying as it scraped the stage. The human dodged narrowly, the force of the strike shaking the ground. Another claw came, fast and brutal. The human ducked, rolled, and fired at close range. The shot struck the alien's shoulder, burning flesh. The Krental howled in fury, his eyes wild, but still he did not fall. The girl's voice trembled as she cried, "You cannot beat him. He is stronger. He is too many times stronger." The human glanced back at her, his expression unshaken. "I don't need to be stronger," he said. "I only need to be human." Then he moved again, faster than the alien expected. He ducked another swipe, slid under the Krental's arm, and fired directly into his leg. The alien staggered, his massive body crashing to one knee. The crowd gasped as the impossible happened. The mighty buyer, feared and untouchable, was brought down by a single human. The auctioneer stammered, sweat pouring down his face. This is madness. The order will collapse." But before he could finish, the human turned his weapon toward him. "You will release all of them," the human said, his voice like iron. The girl gasped, her eyes wide. He was not only here for her, he was here for everyone, the auctioneer's vote. I shook. "If I release them, I will be ruined. The houses will kill me." The human's gaze hardened. "Then be ruined." The girl's chest tightened, her heart beating fast. For the first time in years, the women in the cages lifted their heads. They watched with wide, trembling eyes. Hope flickered in their faces, small and fragile, but alive. The crowd erupted in confusion, some demanding blood, others whispering about freedom. The guards hesitated, unsure who to obey. The Krental buyer tried to rise again, but the human aimed his weapon directly at his chest. "Stay down," he said, his tone sharp. The alien snarled, but froze, the wound in his leg forcing him still. The girl stood beside the human now, no longer hiding behind him, her voice soft but firm. She whispered, "You are not like them, are you?" The human shook his head, his eyes scanning the hall. "No," he said, "and neither are you." The auctioneer trembled, torn between greed and fear. Finally, he raised his hand in surrender. "Release them," he ordered the guards, his voice cracking. One by one, the cages opened, chains clattered to the ground. The women inside stepped out slowly, as if not believing it was real. The girl's tears ran freely now. She turned to the human, whispering, "You did this. You saved them." The human's voice stayed calm. "No, they saved themselves. I only reminded them they were never slaves." The hall erupted into chaos again. But this time, it was different. The crowd no longer cheered for the auction. They shouted in fear, in disbelief. Some fled, some stayed frozen. The order of the marketplace had been shattered in a single night. The girl gripped the human's hand tightly, her voice steady now. "What happens next?" she asked. The human looked toward the broken cages, the freed women, the furious buyers still glaring in silence. He breathed deep and said, "Next, we run." The sound of alarms echoed through the hall. Reinforcements would come. The houses would not let this insult go unanswered. But the girl knew one thing. Her life had changed. Forever. The breeding machine was gone. She was free, and freedom had a human face. The alarms wailed like screaming beasts, red lights flashing across the hall. Metal doors slammed shut, trapping the air inside with a heavy thud. The freed women clung together in confusion, fear rising again after their moment of hope. The auctioneer shouted into a communicator, "Seal the exits, no one leaves alive." The Krental buyer growled from the floor, blood dripping from his wounded leg. "Bring me that human, I want his head." The human pulled the girl's hand, his voice sharp but steady. "We move now." She stumbled after him, her legs weak, her mind still drowning in disbelief. "Where will we go?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Anywhere but here," he answered, his tone calm as stone. They pushed through the narrow corridors behind the auction stage. The walls smelled of rust and old smoke, the floor sticky with spilled drink and blood. Behind them, heavy boots thundered closer. The guards were chasing. The girl's heart pounded so fast she thought it would burst. Every step felt like it could be her last. The human led with sharp turns, his movements fast but controlled. He seemed to know where to go, even in the maze of the market. She asked between breaths, "You have been here before, haven't you?" He nodded once. "Long ago, I learned how this place works." His eyes narrowed, and I swore I would tear it apart one day. They passed a row of cages, still filled with others not yet freed. The women inside reached out, whispering please, their hands shaking through the bars. The girl slowed, her heart twisting. "We cannot leave them." The human glanced back, his jaw tight. "If we stay, we die." His voice softened for a moment. "But this is not the end, I promise you." He fired at the lock of one cage as they ran, the metal snapping open. "Run," he told the women. "Run now. Don't look back." Hope sparked again as the women stumbled out, their voices trembling with gratitude. The footsteps behind grew louder, the guards shouting, "Corner them! Block the south exit!" The human's hand tightened on the girl's wrist, pulling her faster. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she refused to stop. She had been chained too long. Now she would rather die running than be dragged back. A corner turned and suddenly a squad of armored guards blocked their path. Blades gleamed, eyes glowed with fury. The girl gasped, stumbling back. "There's too many," she whispered, panic rising. The human did not hesitate. "Stay behind me," he said, raising his weapon. The fight erupted in a storm of sound. Shots cracked, sparks flew, steel clashed. The human moved with deadly precision. Each strike meant to kill or disable, but there were too many, and for every guard that fell, more came. The girl's fear turned into fire. Her eyes darted to the walls, to the shadows, to the weapons lying near the fallen. Her hands shook, but she bent and picked up a blade. When a guard lunged at the human from behind, she screamed and swung. The blade struck true. The guard stumbled back with a roar. The human turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. "You fight," he said, a hint of respect in his voice. Her breath came fast. "If I don't, we die." Together they fought, step by step. He shot, she struck. The corridor filled with the sound of battle, the stink of blood and smoke. Finally, the last guard fell, his body crashing to the floor with a hollow thud. The girl collapsed against the wall, her hands trembling, her chest heaving. Her blade slipped from her fingers, clattering to the floor. The human crouched beside her, his voice low. "You did well." Her eyes met his, tears mixing with sweat. "I don't want to go back." "You won't," he said firmly. "Not while I live." But the alarms still wailed, and the footsteps had not stopped. More enemies were coming, stronger ones. The human pulled her up again. "We're close to an exit, but we need to move." Her legs shook, but she forced herself forward, her heart screaming for freedom. They reached a wide loading bay, massive steel doors blocking the path. Beyond them, faint light shone, the outside world. But the doors were locked, heavy and unbreakable without a code. The girl's hope faltered. "We're trapped," she whispered. The human's jaw tightened, his eyes scanning the control panel. He moved quickly, his hands pressing buttons, wires sparking under his touch. The girl watched him work with desperate eyes. Behind them, voices echoed closer. The guards were minutes away. "No time," she whispered, panic rising. "Trust me," he said, his voice calm even now. The panel sparked one final time. The heavy doors groaned and began to rise, light spilling into the dark bay. The girl's heart leapt, her eyes wide, but before they could step through, the Krental buyer appeared again, limping but furious. His massive form filled the doorway, claws dripping blood. "You cannot escape me, human," he roared. "I will tear you apart." The girl gasped, pulling back. Her body trembled, her freedom so close, yet blocked again. The human stepped forward, his weapon raised, his voice calm. "Then try," he said. The bay shook as the alien lunged. The final battle for escape had begun. The bay shook with the roar of the Krental buyer. His claws slashed down, tearing deep grooves into the steel floor. The girl screamed as the human pulled her aside, the strike missing her by inches, the air filled with sparks and the stench of burning metal. The human fired his weapon again, each shot striking the massive alien. But still the monster moved forward. The girl's heart pounded like a drum, her breath sharp and ragged. She whispered, "We cannot win," her voice breaking. But the human's eyes stayed calm. Like a storm held in silence, he shouted back, "We don't need to win. We just need to escape," the alien lunged. Jet again, his massive hand closing around the human's arm. The weapon clattered to the floor, sparks flying as it slid away. The crowd of freed women screamed from behind, frozen between terror and hope. The girl grabbed a broken pipe from the floor, her hands shaking. She struck with all her strength at the alien's leg. The blow made the monster stumble, just enough. The human twisted free, grabbed his weapon again, and fired point blank into the alien's chest. The roar that followed shook the hall. The giant collapsed, his body crashing to the floor with a deafening thud. Silence fell, broken only by the alarm still screaming above. The girl's legs gave way, and she sank to the ground. Trembling, the human reached for her hand, pulling her back to her feet. "No time," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "Move." Together they ran through the rising door, the light of the outside world spilling over them. They stumbled into the night air. The marketplace behind them blazed with chaos, alarms still echoing, shouts carrying into the distance. The girl gasped at the sight of the sky, dark but free, wide but dangerous. Her tears burned her cheeks as she whispered, "I thought I would never see the stars again." The human's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steadying her. "You will see more than stars," he said softly, "if we survive the night." They ran through the twisted streets of the alien city, narrow alleys filled with shadows. The smell of oil and smoke clung to the air. Neon signs flickered overhead. Behind them, heavy boots echoed, searchlights sweeping across the rooftops. The girl stumbled, nearly falling, but the human caught her again, pulling her close. "They will not stop," she whispered. "The houses will hunt us forever." The human's eyes narrowed, his voice calm but heavy. "I know." Finally, they ducked into a broken warehouse on the edge of the city. The building groaned with rust and age, shadows stretching across the broken glass windows. Inside, it was cold and damp, the air thick with dust. The human pulled her to the corner, hiding them behind fallen crates. The girl collapsed onto the floor, her chest heaving, her hands trembling. For the first time since her chains were cut, she could breathe without someone pulling her forward. Her voice cracked as she spoke. "Why?" she asked, her eyes filled with confusion and tears. "Why would you risk your life, your freedom, for me?" The human sat beside her, his weapon resting across his knees. For a long moment he did not answer, his eyes staring into the shadows. Finally he said, "Because I know what it is to be powerless." The girl blinked, stunned, her lips parting, but no words coming. The human continued, his voice quiet but sharp. "Long ago, my people were taken too, not as breeding machines, but as tools, laborers, slaves in chains." His hands clenched around the weapon, his jaw tight. "I watched friends die in the mines. I watched families torn apart, and no one came for them. No one freed them." His gaze shifted to her, steady and unflinching. "I swore that if I ever had the chance, I would not walk past someone suffering as I did." The girl's breath caught, her tears spilling again. She whispered, "So you saved me because of your past?" The human shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "I saved you because you are not broken, not yet, because I could see in your eyes that you were still fighting inside, even if you didn't believe it." Her lips trembled, her heart tightening at his words. No one had ever looked at her like that. No one had ever told her she was worth saving. The silence stretched, broken only by the distant sound of search patrols outside. The girl moved closer, her voice small but steady. "What will happen now?" she asked. The human loaded his weapon again, the click echoing through the warehouse. "Now," he said, "we survive, we hide, and when the time comes, we fight back." Her eyes widened. "Fight back," she whispered, almost not believing. His voice hardened. "The houses believe they own the galaxy. They believe people are property. But they are wrong, and someone has to remind them." The girl's heart pounded with fear and hope all at once. She whispered, "And you think one human can do this?" The human gave a small smile, not of arrogance, but of quiet certainty. "One human can start something," he said, "and sometimes that is enough." She looked at him, her tears shining in the dim light. For the first time, she felt not only free, but strong. Her chains were gone, her spirit flickered alive again, and she knew, whatever came next, she would not face it alone. Outside, the city buzzed with patrols, lights sweeping across rooftops. The search had not stopped, the danger had not faded. But in that dark warehouse, for a moment, there was peace, and in the girl's heart, for the first time in years, there was hope. The warehouse walls groaned with every gust of wind. Shadows stretched long across the broken floor. The girl sat close to the human, her breath uneven but steady. Outside, the city pulsed with sirens and lights, alien patrols shouting orders as their boots pounded the streets. The search had grown more intense, louder, closer. The girl clutched her knees, whispering, "They will never stop. They will hunt us until the end." The human checked his weapon, his calm eyes never leaving the dark doorway. "They will try," he said quietly, "but they won't win." The girl looked at him, her eyes wet. "How can you be so sure?" The human's voice sharpened. "Because the houses fight with fear, but fear is weak when people stop bowing to it." The girl swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing on her heart. She whispered, "And you believe I can stop bowing too?" His gaze softened. "You already have," he said. "You fought in that corridor. You chose to stand when everything told you to fall. That is strength, more strength than they know." Her chest tightened, her tears slipping down her cheek. For so long she had believed herself nothing but property, a broken machine. But this human, this stranger, saw her as something else. Not weak, not worthless, but strong, alive, worth saving. The warehouse door rattled suddenly, metal shaking under heavy impact. Voices barked outside. "Search inside, they cannot have gone far." The girl froze, panic surging. "They found us," she whispered, her voice trembling. The human grabbed her hand, pulling her deeper into the shadows. His voice was low, sharp, certain. "Stay quiet, stay close." The door burst open, boots thundered inside. Searchlights swept across the broken walls, dust rising in the beams. The girl pressed against the human's arm, her heart slamming like a drum. The guards moved in groups, scanning every corner, their weapons raised. One beam of light passed so close she could see the guard's eyes glowing behind the visor. She held her breath, praying the silence would hide her racing pulse. The human stayed still as stone, his eyes calculating every movement. When one guard drew too close, the human struck fast, a sharp blow to the throat, a silent shot fired. The guard collapsed without a sound, dragged quickly into the shadows. The girl gasped softly, both terrified and in awe of his precision. But the others grew suspicious, voices echoing, "Unit 6, report, Unit 6. The silence gave them their answer. "They are here," one shouted. "Find them." The warehouse erupted in chaos, lights flashing, weapons firing. The human pulled the girl down behind a crate, returning fire with deadly aim. Bolts of energy scorched the air, cracking against the steel walls. The girl pressed her hands against her ears, her whole body trembling. Still, she forced herself to pick up the fallen guard's weapon. If this was the end, she would not face it weak. Side by side they fought. the human firing with calm precision, and the girl striking clumsily but fiercely. The guards fell one after another, their shouts turning to screams. But more kept pouring in, filling the warehouse like a tide of steel and fire. The human's weapon clicked empty. He tossed it aside, drawing a blade from his belt. With every strike, he moved like a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. Finally, silence fell again. The floor littered with fallen guards. Smoke curled in the air. The girl gasped for breath, sweat and tears on her face. Her voice shook. How long until more come? The human answered without hesitation. Minutes, maybe less. Her hands trembled as she asked, "Then what do we do?" He turned toward the broken back wall of the warehouse. Beyond it, faint light glowed, the faint outline of the city's edge. "We run," he said, "and we don't stop." The girl nodded weakly, but her voice carried new fire. "Not as a machine," she whispered, "but as myself." The human gave her a small nod, the faintest smile breaking through his hard expression. "Exactly," he said, "as yourself." They moved quickly through the cracked wall, the night air rushing over them. The city stretched ahead, vast and merciless, filled with enemies and danger. But for the first time, the girl did not see only cages and chains. She saw stars above, endless and free, and in the quiet of her heart, she believed she could reach them. The human walked beside her, his weapon ready, his steps steady. Every shadow could hide a hunter, every sound could mean death. But he did not slow, and neither did she. At the edge of the street, a massive screen flickered to life. The image of the Krental buyer, alive despite his wounds, filled the display. His voice boomed across the city. "The human thief and the stolen breeding stock have escaped. A price is on their heads, alive or dead." The girl's chest tightened, fear clawing back into her heart. Her voice broke. "They will come from everywhere now." The human's hand tightened on Tung, her shoulder, firm, unshaken. "Then let them," he said, his eyes burning with fire. "As long as I breathe, you are free." The city lights flared, search drones hummed overhead. The girl gripped his hand tightly, her heart both heavy and burning with hope. Together they stepped into the unknown, hunted, marked, but unbroken. Their story was not finished. It had only just begun.